All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Opposite Reaction. Nick Hamilton, Jackie Ray. You know what it is. So, we had a lot to talk about. A lot of things going on. A lot of things opening up. And I just got one question for you, Jackie Ray. What you say?
All right, guys. I hope you are following me on social media because this
Lord
is
knows
something. I try. This is something that has struck near and dear to my heart, this whole movement, because it's one of those "I told you so" type of situations. One of the things that we are hearing right now is defund the police, defund the police. I am very pro defund the police. However, I think that the way that we're phrasing it is making 45 and his minions look better than we want them to look. So maybe we need to figure out a better phrase for defund the police. So first and foremost, when we say defund the police, we're not talking about walking into every police station in the country and saying, "You're fired," and not having a police force. That is not what we're talking about, even though that's Donald Trump's favorite phrase. But that's not what we as logical beings want to do. When we say defund the police, we see a very small example of that here in LA with our mayor. He has decided to take, I think it's like $100,000 away from LAPD.
100 million.
Is it 100 million?
Yeah, 100 million. Because remember, it was $3 billion. It was 54% of the city's budget.
So 100 million.
And it could go up as they're continuing to restructure the budget. It could go up.
So now he's doing that, and he's going to funnel that money back into the communities. The reason why that is good, because one of the things that I think people miss is the police department as it exists right now is designed to allow these things to happen, for these officers to be found not guilty and then lose a civil suit. They literally have in their budget money to pay out when they act inappropriately, which to me is the biggest way to condone people behaving inappropriately I've ever seen. So what defunding the police wants to do, for example, when you think of Tamir Rice, when he was in the playground by himself playing with a toy gun, a police officer should not be who responds to that because it is a child. So defunding the police says when you call 911 and you say, "Oh, I see a kid in the park with a gun," police who have proven they have a history of responding to situations poorly. We know that officer, his car didn't even come to a complete stop before he shot Tamir. So we don't send a police officer to that instance. We send a social worker. When somebody calls and says, "Hey, I think my neighbor, her boyfriend is beating the hell out of her," we don't send police officers to that situation. We send someone who is more versed in how to deal with people who are in a heightened emotional state. So, which makes sense because even though you call 911 when there's a fire, guess who they don't send? They don't send the police, they send the fire department because that's a very specific need. So now we're going to take away some of their power to respond to each and every call, number one. And the most important aspect of this bill is because right now we're moving towards a militarized police force. So it's going to stop that dead in its tracks, which is what we need to do. Because like I said, we've had technically about 20 more hashtags that we could have just during this movement when people are like, "Oh my God, things are changing." They're not. It's just that people are so focused on this protest that we're not hearing about these other people who have lost their lives to police. I am all for defunding the police. Me and my best friend, we have a tree of people who we will call if we're in trouble. 911 is the absolute last resort because it's not safe for us. So imagine being able to call the police and say, "Hey, I have this specific situation I need help with," and you're not getting some stir crazy cop who's trigger happy at your location. You'd feel more inclined to call the police, because I've also read that something like 20%, I think 20 to 30% of minorities don't feel comfortable calling 911 as it is. So you have to change that.
I believe we have some very intelligent listeners and subscribers to this podcast. So I'm going to speak to the idiots right now. First and foremost, defund the police. You got to understand, and I'm sick and tired of seeing you idiots out here talking about, "Don't defund the police. We need the police." No. Do you understand what defund the police means? That means as she said, to reallocate funds to other things. You don't need to spend $2 to $3 billion on a police force that has done nothing but continue its corruption in this society against black people and people of color. Number two, You do not need to, you have to understand, defund the police means to reallocate funds. You have mental health, you have parks and rec. There are other things within the school districts that need to be upgraded because we have some of the systematically some of the worst schools and school districts in the country in our neighborhoods. That money can go to bettering schools, or at least bettering the curriculum so kids can have an opportunity to be better.